From the News Channel 5 Network, this is Sportsline.
Hey there, Titans Talk on your television. Steve Layman here. Glad you are here with us on this Monday night on News Channel 5. Plus, the day after the opener of the 2022 season, and the Tennessee Titans a loser in Week 1 for the second consecutive year. 21-20 against the Giants. Came down to the final kick. Much like the end of last season, it was a kick, a field goal, long distance into the north end zone at Nissan Stadium. And just like back in January, it went against the Titans. The Bengals hit that one, Evan McPherson, from 52 yards to knock the Titans out of the playoffs in the divisional round. Yesterday, it was Randy Bullock with a 47-yard attempt trying to lift the Titans across the finish line and give them a win after a complete second-half collapse. And it goes wide left. And once again, there is heartbreak on the east bank of the Cumberland River. The Titans falling in a game that they led 13-0 at the half. They were in complete control. The offense was good off the start. Had some opportunities to give themselves a bigger cushion in the first half, but settled for field goals, and so it was 13-0. But at that point of the game, the defense had been dominant. They had gotten after Daniel Jones. They'd sacked him 5 times in the first half. You had Saquon Barkley essentially under wraps. He had some decent runs, but nothing big to talk about. The receivers hadn't amounted to very much, and you just felt like the Titans were going to pull away and, frankly, dominate this football game. And then everything flipped in the second half. It truly was a tale of 2 different games. And when you got to the second half, the Titans immediately have a penalty on the kickoff return. So they're backed up. They go 3 and out. Get a great punt, by the way, from Ryan Stonehouse. But immediately, first play from scrimmage, Saquon Barkley has his biggest run of the day. Biggest run in a long time, as a matter of fact. 68 yards down the sideline before he's finally pushed out of bounds at the Tennessee 22. And the Giants were in business. All of a sudden, they had some life after having 0 life in the first half. A couple of plays later, Barkley scores. Now it's a 13-7 game. The Titans go 3 and out again. Giants get the ball right back. Christian Fulton gets caught looking in the backfield. Sterling Shepard gets behind him. Jones hits him for really the one big play in the Giants passing game all day long. It's a 65-yard touchdown, and just like that, it is a tie game at 13. Those types of things just cannot happen, and frankly, they have not happened much for this Titans team. They don't give up a lot of X plays. They don't let it be easy for the opponent. They don't let them off the hook. Whatever you want to say, and the Titans have lost some games that they shouldn't lose over the years. But for the most part, they make it difficult on opponents. If you're going to beat them, you're going to have to play one of your better games. Or you're going to have to get the rare game where the Titans turn it over multiple times. Yesterday, the Titans defense made it easy at times for the Giants. They allowed them to move the ball down the field in X plays. And that can't happen. It was incredibly disappointing for a Titans defense that has tons of expectations. And I know Harold Landry wasn't out there, but that wasn't the deal yesterday. The deal yesterday was the Titans failed to shore up the gaps in run defense. This is supposed to be one of the best run defenses in the league. They gave up 283 yards rushing yesterday. I mean, that can't happen. And you're talking about one of the best overall defenses giving up 21 points in the second half. Then you look at the other side of the ball, and the offense completely stalling out after halftime. We talked about those 2 quick 3 and outs. There were 3 3 and outs in total, 4 drives that led directly to punts, and the 4th possession only was 5 plays. It was a second half in which they really didn't have anything going other than the 1 touchdown drive. And then the final drive, which was mainly helped by Giants penalties, and then a beautiful throw from Tannehill to Kyle Phillips. At the end of the day, there are a lot of things to complain about, but the Titans simply made too many mistakes. They allowed too many big plays defensively, and offensively, they just couldn't sustain the rhythm to allow themselves to really grab control of the game in the second half. And that was the difference. And we'll talk tonight about some of the things that we saw, you know, the in particulars about the running game, what you saw from the offensive line, guys in the receiving core, defensively. We can talk about all of that as we move along here on the program tonight. But that's kind of the general theme here. You wondered how the Titans would come out after a summer in which a lot of their key guys didn't play in the preseason. Well, they were really good in the first half. But they left a little meat on the bone, to use one of their sayings, and didn't finish drives. They ended up with a couple of field goals, so the lead was only 13 at the half as opposed to bigger. It could have been 17 or 21, but it was just 13-0. And then they stalled in the second half offensively, and the defense, which has bailed this team out so much over the last year and a half, the defense could not do the job. It gave up too many big plays. It couldn't get the stop when it needed to. It couldn't get the two-point conversion stop that it had to have at the end of the game. And Randy Bullock couldn't bail them out with that last kick. But it definitely didn't come down to the final kick. Should he have made it? Would you have loved to have seen it going through the uprights? Yes. But this was a complete team collapse in multiple phases in the second half of that game. What were your thoughts watching the game yesterday, watching that collapse in the second half? Where do you place the blame? What do you want to see different? 737-7767 is the number. We invite your calls here tonight on Titans Talk, and we begin with Eric. Eric, good evening. Welcome to Titans Talk.
Hey, how you doing, Steve?
Good.
Hey, Steve, just a couple observations from the Titans games yesterday. First of all, it's like a tale of two halves. They played a fantastic first half, but then a horrible second half, especially in the second half where, and again, I'm not calling for coaches to be fired, but you, of course, heard the criticism top down again, especially with some of the plays like, I guess it was the 3rd and 1 where Derrick Henry was in the Wildcat and he fumbles the ball, and then the whole thing where I guess it was 3rd and inches and they tried to end around with the Jeff Swain deal and he gets tackled for a huge loss.
Yeah.
A lot of people are upset about that. And also in the first half, Titans 0 penalties. I think they had all the penalties in the second half, 8. Also in the first half, the Giants only had 133 yards total offense. In the second half, just in those 2 drives where they scored the touchdown, they had 147 yards. Daniel Jones, other than the long touchdown pass, didn't do anything. And Saquon Barkley, of course, killed them with the run. But here's the thing, guys, Steve, that really kind of bothers me. One of the things I heard a lot of people were putting the loss on Randy Bullock. There were some people saying, oh, he should make that kick or he should be cut. Let me say this. I'm not going to argue whether or not you should make the kick. You probably should because you're getting paid. But there's 2 issues I would counter with that. Number one, I thought Mike Vrabel, I have a lot of respect for what he's done as Titan as a coach, but that whole thing about the timeout to me was bogus. He said that he was trying to square it up in the middle of the field or whatever it was, getting better catch the kick. Everybody saw the play clock was down to 1 second. He had to call the timeout or they would have lost 5 yards, been backed up further. To me, that should have been managed better, the clock management, game management, to where they could have gotten maybe a little bit closer and maybe he could have made it. Because I was telling people, I was at the game yesterday in the 6 I was in, boy, they screwed that up. I'm hoping and praying that does not come back to bite them in the butt, and it sure did. I had a feeling that was going to happen because of that whole screw-up. But the last thing is, and this is the main point that I want to make, it should have never came down to the position where you're having your kicker lined up to win the football games because they had a 13-point lead. You blew that, and it should have been more than that. They should at least have another field goal or another touchdown. They should have been at least 17-0 or 29-0. That's a team. You can't blow a lead like that. And what makes this really worse is that you lost to a terrible football team with just basically a quarterback that made those last legs. That's what's frustrating about this, because we're playing far superior quarterbacks down the schedule, like a Josh Allen. Of course, next week, Patrick Mahomes, the other quarterbacks, AFC West, as well as Aaron Rodgers. You can't have that type of play. And I think the last thing, and then I'll get off, is one of the things, of course, that everybody's going to be talking about, whether it's fair or not, I've heard a little bit or not, what makes this even loss worse was the fact that A.J. Brown with the Eagles had 10 catches for 155 yards. A lot of people say, we've had that with it here yesterday. We might have won, which we may have. We just don't know. I mean, he's gone. We can't worry about it. I hate that he's gone, but it is what it is. Hopefully they'll play a lot better in Buffalo and get the victory because they usually win when they're not expected to. But it's got to be a better performance than that. This is a Giants team that had not won their first game in 6 years. And now we still have not won a home opener since 2010. That's unacceptable when you can't win a home game in nearly 12 years. We just get off these slow starts and get behind the 8 ball, which is, maybe we'll turn around and get the playoffs. I don't know, but that's just my thoughts. I'll get off. Take care, and you have a good evening, Steve.
Yeah, Eric, I think you hit a lot of really good points there. Thank you. It is frustrating. I guess the good news is that the Titans have been in this situation before. They've lost a home opener. They've lost the first game of the season. And certainly under Mike Vrabel, they've continued to have success even in spite of that. The bad news to me, and you hit on this a little bit as well, is one of the stars that has helped Mike Vrabel have so much success here in Tennessee is now a Philadelphia Eagle, and he looked really good yesterday. He looked like a guy that the Titans could use. And we hit on the Harold Landry injury last week. I don't think it was a massive factor yesterday, but it will be a huge factor throughout the course of the season. It just is when you lose a Pro Bowl outside linebacker. And so to lose a home opener this time with a new team that maybe doesn't have quite the studs that you had a year ago at certain places, to lose to a bad team like the Giants, which hadn't won a season opener in 5 years, only once in the last dozen years, and is going to be at the bottom of the NFC East this year. They just are. To lose to that team in that fashion when you led that way, maybe it won't come back to hurt this team, but you have to wonder about it. You do. You really have to wonder what type of a performance this will be down the road. It was bad enough yesterday. But when you look back middle of the season or in week 15 or 16 or 17, what's it going to mean? Is it going to be the difference between the Titans being on top of this division, which, by the way, yesterday was all the proof you need that the AFC South is not a very good division in the grand scheme of things in the National Football League right now. You had the Colts and Texans playing to a completely inept tie down in Houston. You had the Jaguars getting down big, coming back, taking the lead, then blowing that in the fourth quarter in Washington against the Commanders. Not a single team in the AFC South walked away with a win yesterday, and 2 of them played each other. That's the division you're talking about. And so will this game ultimately kill the Titans? We don't know yet. But could it have an impact on them not getting out of the gate quickly and not leading this division early on and having to play catch up later on? Maybe. Bigger picture, if you think the Titans are going to rebound and have a really good season, last year they were the #1 seed in the AFC. They got that bye. They had home field advantage in the playoffs. They didn't make it count, but they had it. Could this loss be the type of loss that could crush you later on in the season when you're talking about playoff seeding? Who you're going to have to play, where you're going to have to play them? Could you get the bye or not? Maybe. You don't get many opportunities in the NFL. You only get 17. And for this Titans team, one of their 8 home opportunities this year, because remember, this is the year they've got 9 road games out of that 17. One of their 8 home opportunities, they essentially lit on fire in the second half of that game, and that is really unfortunate. Again, they've got the experience of bouncing back from difficult losses. Last year, this team lost to the Jets, another team from New York that isn't any good. They lost a game to the Jets in which, draw another similarity, Randy Bullock missed a field goal that would have tied it up late in overtime. Probably led to a tie instead of a loss. Yesterday, he could have won it. But the Titans bounced back from that last year, and they were the #1 seed in the AFC. Can they rebound this year? They better do it hurt, because next Monday night is a massive challenge against the Buffalo Bills, a team that a lot of people think is the favorite to win the Super Bowl this year, and they certainly did nothing on Thursday night in dismantling the Rams, last year's Super Bowl champions, the defending champs on their home turf. Did nothing to dissuade you if you are of that belief. Josh Allen and the Bills look like a team to beat, certainly in the AFC. Titans have had good fortune with them the last couple of years, but this one is in Buffalo. It's their home opener. You know they are going to be ready, so you have to turn it around in a hurry and have a much better performance. Phone lines are open, 737-7767. We welcome more of your calls in on this discussion. What did you make of yesterday's game? Who shares the biggest blame for the loss? And what has to change for this thing to turn around in week 2 or in the coming weeks of this season? This is Titans Talk on News Channel 5 Plus.